What happens when the image dies before the person does? What happens when the cameras leave? The applause fades. The speeches stop. And two people are left standing inside the wreckage of ambition. Because on the outside, the Fairfax family looked like the American dream. Power, education, prestige. A rising black political figure once considered the future of Virginia politics. A successful dentist, beautiful children, a polished family portrait fit for campaign mailers and magazine covers. But behind one front door in Annandale, Virginia, something was collapsing, quietly, painfully, dangerously. And on the April morning, that collapse became irreversible. Police say a teenage boy called 911 after hearing gunshots inside the family home. Inside that home, authorities would discover former Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax and his wife, Cerina Fairfax, dead. A murder-suicide, a family destroyed, and two children left to carry the echoes of that morning for the rest of their lives. Tonight, we are not here to glorify power. We are not here for political gossip. We are not here for sensationalism. Tonight, we step into the lounge of truth to remember a woman whose life deserves more than a headline. This is the story behind closed doors. Before we step into tonight's story, I want you to picture the place where it happened, Annandale, Virginia, a suburban community tucked inside Fairfax County, just outside Washington, D.C. Tree-lined streets, well-kept homes, family walking dogs, professional commuting to government offices, the kind of neighborhood many people associate with safety, stability, and success. And there's an irony here that's difficult to ignore. The Fairfax family lived in Fairfax County, a name that had become familiar throughout Virginia politics, now shared the same name as the county where this tragedy unfolded. At first glance, it almost sounds poetic, but on an April morning in Annandale, that coincidence became something much darker, because the name Fairfax would no longer be connected to political ambition. It would become connected to unimaginable loss. And that's what makes this case so unsettling. This wasn't a crime that unfolded in some remote location people rarely think about. It happened in a community where neighbors mow their lawns on weekends, where children ride bicycles after school, where families gather around dinner tables. A reminder that domestic violence doesn't care about your income. It doesn't care about education. It doesn't care about political titles. And it certainly doesn't care about appearances, because sometimes the most devastating tragedies occur behind the doors people least expect. Welcome back to Cigar A Crime, live in the Lounge of Truth. I'm your host, Dr. D, and every week we sit together where smoke meets memory, where silence meets accountability, and where forgotten stories find their voice again. Here in the lounge, we don't rush. We don't exploit pain for entertainment. And we never allow victims to disappear beneath the weight of headlines, because the smoke never lies. Tonight's episode is heavy, not because it involves politics, not because of fame, but because it reminds us how tragedy can grow inside homes people assume are safe. Homes with degrees on the wall, homes with smiling family portraits, homes where neighbors wave politely, while tension quietly ferments behind locked doors. Tonight we examine the death of Cerina Fairfax, a mother, a professional, a woman described by many as intelligent, compassionate, driven, and deeply devoted to her children. And we examine the unraveling of the man accused of taking her life before taking his own. So dim the lights, cut the noise, and settle into the smoke. Because tonight, the Lounge of Truth opens its doors to a story about power, pressure, collapse, and the danger of what people hide behind closed doors. Tonight's cigar is My Father Le Bijou, 1922. Like the story we are about to tell, it begins with sophistication and promise. But as the smoke develops, darker notes emerge: espresso, black pepper, leather, and earth. Elegant construction, dark wrapper, smooth draw. At first glance, refined, controlled, sophisticated. But underneath, strength, heat, pressure, intensity. And that's exactly why this cigar belongs beside tonight's case. Because the Fairfax story, from the outside looking in, appeared polished. Political success, professional accomplishment, status, visibility. A family many people probably assumed had made it. But pressure buried beneath polished surfaces can become volcanic. And volcanic pressure doesn't disappear. It waits, builds, cracks foundations from underneath. The Le Bijou starts smooth, almost deceptively calm. Then the spice arrives, not immediately, gradually. That slow escalation mirrors what many experts say happens in volatile domestic situations, especially during separation, especially during divorce, especially when identity, reputation, finances, and control begin slipping away. Tonight's smoke carries complexity, bitterness, weight, and grief. So if you're smoking with me tonight, take your time. Take your time with this one, because this story deserves patience. Before there was a crime scene, there was a love story. Before there were court filings, there were college classrooms. Before there was heartbreak, there was hope. To understand what happened in Annandale, Virginia, we first have to understand the two people at the center of this story. Not as headlines, not as political figures, not as victims and offenders, but as human beings. Cerina Fairfax grew up in Prince Williams County, Virginia. Friends describe her as focused, disciplined, and quietly ambitious. Unlike some people who chase attention, Cerina seemed most comfortable helping others rather than standing in the spotlight. She came from a close family. Cerina was the daughter of Conchita Wanzer Clark and Kevin Pope, and was raised alongside siblings, including her sister Arise. Family and faith remained important parts of her life throughout adulthood. She was a member of St. Ambrose Catholic Church long before she became Dr. Cerina Fairfax. She was a young woman with a dream of entering healthcare. That dream led her to Duke University. At Duke, she pursued her undergraduate studies and distinguished herself academically. She graduated in 1999 before continuing toward a career in dentistry. Later, she attended the Virginia Commonwealth University School of Dentistry, earning her dental degree in 2005. Dentistry wasn't simply a job for Cerina. It became her life's work. Patients remembered her warmth, her humor, her ability to make nervous people comfortable. Colleagues described her as compassionate and community-minded. Beyond treating patients, she volunteered and supported charitable causes throughout Virginia. She eventually established her own successful dental practice in Fairfax County. Outside the office, Cerina loved reading. She enjoyed yoga, trail running, travel, and spending time with her family and her dogs. Friends say she wasn't interested in becoming a political celebrity. She wasn't seeking public attention. In many ways, she preferred life away from the spotlight. During Justin's political rise, friends recalled that she often seemed uncomfortable with public-facing demands of politics. Yet she supported her husband anyway, because that's what partners often do. Justin Edward Fairfax was born on February 17th, 1979, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When he was about 5 years old, his family relocated to Washington, D.C. after his parents divorced. He and his siblings were largely raised in the home of their grandparents in Northeast Washington. Justin was one of 4 children. His mother was a pharmacist. His father was a Harvard-educated consultant who worked with nonprofit organizations. Education was emphasized from an early age. Justin attended DeMatha Catholic High School in Maryland, where he served as senior class president. Even then, people noticed his charisma and leadership abilities. His older brother, Roger, would later become a nationally respected legal scholar and eventually dean of Howard University School of Law. Achievement ran throughout this family. Justin earned a scholarship to Duke University. There, he studied public policy and graduated in 2000. And at Duke, he met Cerina, 2 talented Black students with promising futures. A future dentist, a future lawyer and politician. Neither could have known that decades later, their names would be linked forever by tragedy. After Duke, Justin worked in Washington, D.C., including on Capitol Hill with the Senate Judiciary Committee. He later attended Columbia Law School and graduated in 2005. While there, he served on the prestigious Columbia Law Review. His resume was extraordinary. Federal prosecutor, attorney, political candidate, eventually Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. For many people, Justin represented a new generation of political leadership. He became only the 2nd African American elected to statewide office in Virginia. By 2018, the Fairfax family appeared to have everything: education, professional success, a beautiful family, political influence. Friends even jokingly referred to the couple as the Huxtables, a reference to the successful professional family portrayed on television, The Cosby Show. From the outside looking in, they appear to be living the American dream. I've mentioned that the story of Cerina and Justin begins at Duke University in the late 1990s. Both were ambitious students pursuing careers that would eventually place them among Virginia's most accomplished professional couples. They dated, built a relationship, and eventually married on June 17th, 2006. Together, they built a family. Together, they raised 2 children. Together, they navigated law school, dental school, professional careers, and political campaigns. And for years, they appeared inseparable. But appearances can be deceiving, because the same marriage that once symbolized achievement and promise would eventually become consumed by pressure, scandal, financial strain, emotional deterioration, and a divorce battle that neither side would escape. And that is where our story begins to turn. Now let's walk carefully through the timeline. Authorities say the Fairfax family was still living together inside their Annandale area home, despite ongoing divorce proceedings. That detail matters, because cohabitation during separation can intensify emotional volatility, especially when court rulings, financial disputes, and parenting tensions are already active. According to reporting, there had been legal movement surrounding the divorce. A judge had reportedly ordered Justin to vacate the home. And emotionally, that kind of moment can feel seismic for someone already experiencing identity collapse. Again, that does not excuse violence. Nothing excuses violence. But understanding emotional escalation helps us understand danger patterns before tragedy occurs. Now imagine the atmosphere inside that house. Two adults in legal conflict, children present, history, resentment, stress, public shame, financial uncertainty, and emotional exhaustion simmering simultaneously. Then came the morning that changed everything. According to investigators, the violence unfolded in two separate parts of the home. Cerina was found in the basement. Police say she had been shot multiple times. Meanwhile, Justin Fairfax was not found near her. He was discovered upstairs in a bedroom. Beside him was a firearm. Authorities determined he had suffered a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Think about that scene for a moment. Two levels of the same house. A basement where a mother lost her life. An upstairs bedroom where a former lieutenant governor story came to an end. Between those two locations sat the unthinkable reality facing their children. A home that had once held birthday parties, homework assignments, family dinners, and campaign celebrations had become a crime scene. And somewhere between the basement and the upstairs bedroom, a family's future disappeared forever. Investigators began reconstructing the scene immediately. Police examined firearm evidence, scene positioning, timing, 911 communications, ballistics, digital evidence, witness statements. And because this involved a former public official, scrutiny intensified rapidly. Authorities reportedly concluded the deaths were consistent with a murder-suicide. Investigators also reviewed the broader domestic context surrounding the marriage and divorce proceedings. Now, one thing true crime audiences must understand is this. Domestic violence cases often reveal warning signs only after tragedy occurs. Retrospective clarity can create the illusion that outcomes were obvious. But in real time, emotional deterioration often hides behind normalcy, especially in high-achieving households, especially among public figures, especially among families invested in preserving image. Neighbors may see smiles. Co-workers may see professionalism. Friends may hear carefully edited versions of conflict. and children may become silent witnesses to emotional storms adults underestimate. Reports also indicated legal filings discussed concerns involving alcohol and emotional instability. Again, we must be careful not to sensationalize. But these details matter because they help establish the broader psychological climate surrounding the household before the shooting. Investigators likely examine firearm ownership, recent communications, court records, financial stressors, divorce filings, digital messages, the timeline sequences, behavior escalation, and while authorities may eventually close the criminal portion of the case, the emotional investigation for surviving family members would never truly end because surviving trauma isn't solved by paperwork. The media response moved fast. Headlines emphasized Justin's political history almost immediately. Former lieutenant governor, sexual misconduct allegations, political downfall, murder-suicide, and while those details are undeniably relevant, there's always a danger in allowing notoriety to eclipse victimhood. Because suddenly Cerina Fairfax risks becoming the wife, not a full human being, just a supporting detail in a fallen politician's story. And that happens far too often, especially in cases involving powerful men. Social media reaction became predictably divided. Some focused entirely on politics, others focused on masculinity and mental health. Some debated the earlier allegations against Fairfax. Others centered domestic violence awareness. And sadly, some people treated the tragedy like political spectacle instead of a human loss. But true crime done responsibly must resist spectacle, because this wasn't entertainment for the Fairfax children. This wasn't a trending topic inside that home. It was trauma, real trauma, and media framing matters. The words we choose matter. The people we center matter. That's why tonight's episode carries Cerina's name, because victims deserve narrative dignity. Now we arrive at one of the hardest questions in cases like this. Could this tragedy have been prevented? That question haunts nearly every domestic violence homicide investigation. And while we may never know every private detail of the Fairfax marriage, broader patterns remain important. Research consistently shows heightened danger during separation periods. Protective orders, custody battles, financial disputes, forced relocation, identity collapse. Those moments can dramatically increase risk, especially when emotional instability, shame, substance concerns, or rage are already present. So society has to ask uncomfortable questions. Do courts fully recognize escalation danger? Do friends and relatives know what warning signs look like? Do communities take emotional volatility serious before violence occurs? And perhaps most importantly, why are so many men emotionally unequipped to process failure, rejection, humiliation, or loss without destruction? Because underneath many domestic violence tragedies sits a devastating inability to regulate emotional collapse. And unfortunately, public success often hides private instability remarkably well. This case also forces us to confront larger societal truths. Domestic violence does not belong to one class, one race, one profession, one income bracket, or one neighborhood. It exists in mansions, apartments, suburbs, college campuses, luxury condos, political circles, religious communities, everywhere. And public image can become camouflage. Sometimes the very family society admires most are struggling silently behind closed doors. Another difficult truth. Children, they absorb more than adults realize. Even when parents think arguments are hidden. Even when conflict happens behind walls. Children feel instability emotionally long before violence erupts physically. And after tragedy occurs, children often become the forgotten survivors. People discuss headlines, court records, politics, but children are left rebuilding identity from trauma. And that reality should humble every single one of us. You know, what stays with me most about this case isn't the politics. It's the silence afterwards. The silence inside a house after police leave. The silence inside bedrooms where children no longer feel safe. The silence left behind when a mother's voice disappears forever. And I think about how quickly public figures become symbols instead of people. How ambition can consume identity. How shame can metastasize. How emotional collapse, left untreated, can become dangerous. But I also think about Cerina Fairfax, a woman who deserved to grow older, to laugh again, to continue building her career, to watch her children become adults. That future was stolen. And every time domestic violence claims another life, society loses something too. Because these tragedies ripple outward through families, through communities, through generations. And somewhere tonight, there are people living inside emotionally volatile households, wondering if things will get better. If that's you, please hear me carefully. Love should never require fear. Conflict should never require terror. And leaving a dangerous situation is not weakness. It is survival. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is walk away before the smoke turns into fire. Thank you for joining me tonight inside the Lounge of Truth. If this episode moved you, share it. Not for clicks, not for algorithms, but because stories like Cerina, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, resources are available. Please reach out. Please speak up. Please don't suffer in silence. And as always, support the families left behind by violence whenever possible, because healing doesn't end when headlines disappear. Before we close tonight, I want you to take one final draw of smoke with me. And remember this, long after campaign signs disappear, after television panels move on, after headlines fade into archives, 2 children still wake up in a world forever changed. And that is part of the story we must never forget. I'm Dr. D. This has been Cigar A Crime. And until next time, keep seeking truth, because you know the smoke it never lies.